Morning, everybody. Fox is alert now. There is chaos at a Chicago hospital. A gunman opening fire, killing 3 people, including one of Chicago's finest. That's where we start today. Stunning story here. I'm Bill Hemmer, live here in New York City. Morning to you, Sandra.
Good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. A shootout unfolding at that hospital yesterday afternoon. Police say this all began with an argument between the gunman and his ex-girlfriend who worked at the hospital. The suspect shooting the woman outside the building before charging inside and killing 2 more, terrifying everyone nearby.
It was like pow, 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 pow. It was extreme and it was very loud. After that, SWAT came and got us out the utility room and made us walk across the street.
People sitting in the waiting area, we all stood up at one time and we just turned and started running. It was chaos. It was just mass chaos.
Among the victims, Officer Samuel Jimenez, 28-year-old father of 3, joined the force only about a year ago. His fellow officers lining the streets last night, saluting their fallen comrade.
This guy was just shooting that poor woman that got off an elevator. Had nothing to do with nothing. All those officers that responded were heroes, and they saved a lot of lives because we just don't know how much damage he was prepared to do.
Mike Tobin on scene last night with us live this morning in Chicago with more. Mike.
Well, Bill, the gunman, now identified as 32-year-old Juan Lopez, had a relationship with Tamra O'Neill, one of the victims. She worked at the hospital. They had a conflict out in the parking lot. Witnesses say at one point Lopez was standing over her, firing at close range. Then he continued on into the hospital. Officer Samuel Jimenez, new to the force, as you mentioned, 3 children at home, received a call for an officer in need of help. He arrived on the scene and came under fire shortly after that.
When they pulled up, they heard the gunshots, and they did what the heroic officers always do. They ran towards that gunfire. So they weren't assigned to that particular call, but they went, because that's what we do.
25-year-old Dana Less, training to be a pharmacist. As the superintendent mentioned, she just got off the elevator. She probably never knew what hit her when she was shot. The gunman was shot. It is unclear if he was shot by police or if he turned the gun on himself. According to some of the radio traffic last night, he had threatened to kill himself.
Well, it's not the first officer to die in the line of duty, unfortunately, in Chicago this year, is it, Mike?
Unfortunately, it is not. Chicago police are still mourning the death of Commander Paul Bauer, who was killed just a few blocks from here last February. There was a foot chase with a man who lived on Lower Wacker Drive, a homeless man, and that foot chase ended when he opened fire on the officer. So the second officer to be killed this year trying to combat the violence that plagues this city. Last night, Mayor Rahm Emanuel said this tears at the soul of our city. Bill?
Thank you, Mike. Mike Tobin, tough story there from Chicago today. 3 minutes past.
Meanwhile, into this breaking news on the border crisis, an Obama-appointed federal judge ruling against President Trump's ban on asylum for immigrants who cross the border illegally. This coming as the Homeland Security Department says more than 500 criminals have been traveling with the migrant caravan. Garrett Tenney's live from the White House now. Garrett, what is the White House saying this morning about this?
Well, Sandra, so far, neither the White House nor the Department of Homeland Security have commented on this ruling blocking the president's proclamation. But we are also keeping a close eye on the president's Twitter feed, where he often likes to weigh in around this time of day. The ACLU and the Center for Constitutional Rights sued the administration almost immediately after President Trump issued his proclamation on November 9th, which prevented immigrants who are caught crossing the border illegally from being able to then claim asylum. In his ruling, federal judge John Teagar said the president did not have the authority to change our asylum laws, writing, quote, "Congress has clearly commanded in the Immigration and Naturalization Act that any alien who arrives in the United States, irrespective of that alien status, may apply for asylum, whether or not at a designated port of arrival. Whatever the scope of the president's authority, he may not rewrite the immigration laws to impose a condition that Congress has expressly forbidden." That's important to note. This ruling is a temporary restraining order, so this fight is not over. Both sides will come before the court to present their full arguments a month from now. Sandra?
Garrett, the White House is also pushing back on reports about Ivanka Trump's use of a personal email. What are we learning there?
Yeah, Sandra. The Washington Post reported last night that Ivanka Trump used a personal email address to conduct government business, sending hundreds of emails last year using a private email account that she shares with her husband, Jared Kushner. Now, she reportedly did this throughout much of last year before she was briefed on the rules. You'll remember on the campaign trail, candidate Trump was highly critical of Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. Critics are now using that in pointing to his daughter's email practices to call him a hypocrite. But a spokesperson for Ivanka's Ethics Council tells Fox News there are big differences, saying in a statement, quote, to address misinformation being peddled about Mrs. Trump's personal email, she did not create a private server in her house or office. There was never classified information transmitted. The account was never transferred or housed at Trump Organization. No emails were ever deleted, and the emails have been retained in the official account in conformity with records preservation laws and rules. Now, the spokesperson also said Ivanka explained her email use to White House counsel and to congressional leaders last year after she was given this update on what these rules were and how she could follow them. Sandra?
Garrett Tenney at the White House. Thank you.
For more on this, Alan Dershowitz, author of the book, The Case Against Impeaching Donald Trump. Sir, welcome back here. It's good to have you back on America's News. I feel like I'm going to law school today with all these stories out there. Let's get through all three of them, okay? Ivanka Trump's attorneys argue this is not apples to apples. What do you make of that argument?
Well, I think it's hypocrisy on parade. Each side uses whatever arguments they can to help and bolster their partisan position. Look, everybody uses private emails. We now have a list of probably a dozen people in public life who have used emails. Apparently, Ivanka Trump used the emails only for scheduling purposes. There was no classified material. The emails are all preserved. It's a non-issue. It's just partisan bickering. We should not be criminalizing the use of private emails, whether by Hillary Clinton or by Ivanka Trump, and we should put that issue behind us.
Seems to me with the day of technology, we need a better system, and we'll see whether or not that happens in the future. Now, topic number 2, on Whitaker and the lawsuit, Democrats are arguing you need Senate approval for him to be the acting AG. The White House says he's in a temporary position, and by law, you can serve there for a period of up to 210 days. And even after that point, you can argue whether he stays on longer. What do you make of that argument, sir?
Well, I think that's right. I think you have to give the president some discretion to fill vacancies. You can't fill a vacancy permanently. The day it occurs, you also need a confirmation process. People forget that Justice Thurgood Marshall, when he was appointed to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, served as an interim judge for months before his appointment was confirmed. He had not been confirmed that he was serving as a judge. Throughout history, from the founding, we've had interim appointments. I agree, though, that if the interim appointment goes on for a long period of time, or if major irreversible decisions get made by a non-confirmed interim appointee, that can raise some constitutional questions. But this lawsuit itself is much too broad in its scope, challenging the very concept of an interim appointment for a non-confirmed person.
Let me read to you what Senator Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat from Connecticut, is arguing here on screen. He says this: installing Matthew Whitaker so flagrantly defies constitutional law that any viewer of Schoolhouse Rock would recognize it. Americans prize a system of checks and balances, which President Trump's dictatorial appointment betrays. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill, apparently. School of Rock.
Well, you know, I think I was in the School of Harvard, not the School of Rock, for 50 years, and I never heard anybody complain about interim appointments. It's such a partisan attack. If this were a Democrat president who made an interim appointment, we wouldn't hear these senators complaining. It's completely partisan. Now, they have a point if it comes to serving for a long period of time, but I suspect the president is anxious to make a permanent appointment, and then it'll be up to the Senate. If the Senate takes a long time confirming, as they have sometimes, then the interim appointment will last longer. But that's in the nature of things. And the Constitution certainly doesn't preclude a president from making a short-term temporary interim appointment. Let's
see where that argument goes. Topic number 3 on immigration. You know, this is red hot right now. A judge apparently agreeing with a Democratic argument that you do not have to legally enter a port of entry in the United States in order to claim asylum. I think this law can be interpreted sometimes for different people from different countries from overseas. How do you see it, Professor?
Well, I think he has the better of the argument the judge does on the statutory interpretation. There's nothing in the statute that suggests that the president has the authority to overrule Congress. Now, all he's done is given an interim injunction. And so I'm not sure how many people will be affected. Ultimately, he has to make a final decision. But you have to look at the statute. The president's authority is not a constitutional authority. It's limited by statute. If the statute permits asylum seekers to seek asylum, even if they come in illegally, that statutory rule has to prevail. If the president doesn't like that rule, he should go to Congress and have Congress change it.
Okay, just to follow up on that, reading from the Associated Press, in issuing the ban, President Trump used the same powers, it writes, he used last year to impose a travel ban that was ultimately upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court. Is that where this is going?
I don't agree. I think it's a different power. I think the president does have statutory authority and constitutional authority to decide people can't come in from particular countries. That's within his statutory authority. That's part of the statute that authorizes the president to make those decisions. But there's no comparable provision in the asylum statute authorizing the president to make decisions changing the nature of asylum. Look, it's a complicated and interesting statutory interpretation that could go either way. And I think a judge to get an injunction temporarily is probably the right judicial decision to make. We'll see what happens when the case goes to final resolution. It may get all the way up to the higher courts.
Good stuff, sir. Thank you for coming back today. Enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Alan Dershowitz, we'll see where those arguments go. Okay. Next hour here, much more on this. Jonathan Turley is our headliner. Now, the question is, top of the next hour, Sandra, as whether or not Turley agrees with Dershowitz that you just heard there. Okay?
Yeah.
So we'll find out next hour on that coming up.
Many different interpretations, indeed. We'll have that coming up. Meanwhile, after 2 recounts and countless controversies, Florida finally making it official. Right now, election officials are certifying the winners of the state's most contentious midterm elections. More on the big announcement.
Also, President Trump's approval rating hitting a new high when it comes to the economy, managing to pull off something his predecessors could not. The architect of Reaganomics, Art Laffer, standing by. He's got some analysis coming up with Art on that, Sandra.
And heavy rain could promise relief from those deadly California wildfires, but officials are bracing for a whole new set of dangers. We'll have a live report from the ground straight ahead.
Really scary, the fire, having it literally it was right behind us. I'm trying to stay as strong as I can for them. It's really hard to deal with, though. I really just want to break down and just find a new place, but it's hard.
Brand new polling numbers giving the White House, President Trump, a bump when it comes to how he's handling the economy. Polling now sitting at 53%, up from 50% back in August. It's a new high for the president. Art Laffer, former Reagan economic advisor, the man behind Reaganomics. Sir, how you doing? Art, good morning to you.
I'm doing very well, Bill. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I want to talk about the overall economy, generally speaking, but in specific, the Dow futures are headed for a bit of a fall yet again today when we open. We could be down about 400 points in about 15 minutes. What is this administration doing right on the economy? What accounts for 53%, Art?
Well, it's done almost everything right so far, Bill, if I can. The tax bill is spectacular. The deregulation is wonderful. The appointment of Powell as the head of the Fed is terrific. I mean, you don't get better advisors than Larry Kudlow, Steve Mnuchin, and Kevin Hassett. They're phenomenally there. I mean, what Trump is trying to do is a work in progress on the trade. But this is exactly where we were with Reagan. If you'll remember, in August of 1982, we probably were too young, but we hit the bottom of the stock market. It was really still very low in November. And all the policies were in place. Came January 1st, 1983. All of them took effect. The same thing is happening here. And Trump doesn't have to do anything more for the economy.
Very
the economy's
interesting.
Set,
okay, so some rose-colored glasses from Nashville, Tennessee, from Art Laffer.
Maybe.
Just reading from Gallup and Frank Newport, this is what he writes in that piece. Trump's last 2 ratings on handling the economy, 53% now, 50% in August, are well above the average of 45% on this economic approval measure across presidents extending from Ronald Reagan through Barack Obama. So he's reaching back in the 80s just like you were as well.
Yes, he is.
But there's headwinds here. You know, you got the Fed out there, Arts. You've got this battle with China on tariffs. A lot of that is man-made.
Well, they are man-made in many ways. I mean, we had the problem with the Fed as well. Remember, Paul Volcker dropped the interest rates down dramatically. I mean, the 21.5% prime interest rate when we came into office, the rates were dropping because of tight money. Everyone was worried the Fed was going way too far, way too tight. You know, all of these same headwinds occurred with us. We lost the primaries. We lost the midterm elections in November of 1982 badly to the Democrats. Reagan's approvals were very low. And then we had this boom, January 1st, 1983 to June 30th, 1984. We grew by 12% at an 8% per annum annual rate in real GDP. I mean, amazing. By November of 1984, we won the election by beating Mondale 49 to 50. I mean, a landslide. It was Reagan's world. And all the deck has been set. I mean, all I can say to anyone is bring it on. Well, just sit, hold tight, and you're going to see whether this stuff works.
Here's what I'm reading after the midterms. There's no new tax cut package that's going to pass or happen. So what's the best arrow in the quiver for
the tax bill itself? I mean, these things take time. We've dropped the highest rate from 35% to 21%. We dropped the personal income from 39.6 to 37. We have pass-through cuts, 100% expensing, territoriality. These are all in place. And all we have to do is let it steep and come to fruition. And it's working well. Look at those GDP numbers. Look at those employment numbers. They're coming true. It takes time, Bill. And what we'll see is the next 2 years, we'll have plenty of time to see whether this stuff works. If it doesn't, we'll get shellacked. If it does, we'll win landslide in 2020.
I appreciate your optimism. However, you just wonder if the economy's in better shape without this tariff battle. And
I would prefer this tariff battle not to be there.
I know what you're talking about GDP, but some are wondering if the 4%, the 3.5% is just the occasional spike, and really the 2% is the norm that was established over the past 10 years.
Well, that's what they say, but you know, it's amazing how the spike comes right after we pass our bill. I mean, it's we'll see whether it's just a passing fancy or whether it's real. I believe that the economy is set for enormous growth over the next 2-3 years, and I really think it's going to happen. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I've been wrong before, and I'm much better at forecasting the past, Bill, as you know, than I am the future.
I get
but
it.
I'm very comfortable with the position that Trump is in.
Got it. Thank you, Art. Great to see you. Happy Turkey Day.
Have a great Turkey Day if I don't talk to you before.
And we can appreciate that here with Sandra and me. So thank you, Art. Talk to you real
Thanks,
soon.
Sandra.
Certainly sounding optimistic. Hello, Art. Meanwhile, 16 House Democrats are now officially calling for new leadership and vowing to vote against Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. Our A-team will take that one up. They are on deck. Plus, we are awaiting the U.S.'s official report on the murder of Saudi columnist Jamal Khashoggi. We will tell you what the White House is now saying.
The president said it's a complete tragedy. He's been looking for answers. He's directed everybody to go and get those answers, including the Secretary of State, almost immediately following the murder.
Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Avenatti, responding reports that an actress filed a restraining order against him. Reports claim the actress Morelli Minuti filed a domestic violence restraining order only days after Avenatti was detained by police on domestic violence charges. He responded to all of it in a tweet saying, quote, "I've never abused a woman or committed domestic violence." And he claimed to the contrary is completely bogus and fabricated. "I am a target and I will be exonerated." It was not immediately clear if the actress was the same woman who accused Avenatti of domestic violence about a week ago.
Fox News alert on the deadly fires in Northern California. Rescue crews working against the clock, sifting through debris and rubble, searching for any victims before heavy rains move in. Now, new threats of flash flooding and massive mudslides. 82 people confirmed dead statewide, 700 still unaccounted for. Meanwhile, some survivors are returning to their homes or what's left of them.
These used to be two really nice little houses, well built by me, and that's what, you know, the only thing sticking up is the melted refrigerator. I don't have enough time left on the planet to ever have it again, and that's pretty hard to take.
Claudia Cowan's live in Chico, California for us. Claudia?
Good morning, Sandra. Thousands of fire evacuees are waking up at shelters like this one in Chico. This morning, we're at the East Avenue Church, and you can see some of the donated supplies that are helping about 200 people who, for now, are living in the gym here. These folks are also getting medical attention and trying to stave off an outbreak of norovirus that's been going around. 2 more sets of human remains were found yesterday, increasing the number of deaths from the campfire to at least 79, while the number of those unaccounted for has dropped to about 700. But search crews warn some people may never be found due to the intensity of the flames. With evacuation orders now being lifted in some areas around Paradise, residents are returning to sift through the rubble of what used to be their home. The state's insurance commissioner says the losses are staggering.
In 2017, from all the California fires, there was $12.6 billion in insured losses, and that was only 6,800 single-family homes destroyed. Here, we're approaching 11,000 single-family homes destroyed. So this is a much more deadly, much more destructive fire, and the insured losses are going to be a lot greater.
Jones says his office is also educating people about how to avoid getting scammed, for instance, by unlicensed contractors promising a quick home rebuild. Bottom line, this recovery will take years, and officials say people should be wary of shortcuts because it could cost them more in the long run. Rain is in the forecast starting later tonight and into tomorrow. The rain will help wash away some of this unhealthy air, but it will almost certainly complicate ongoing search and recovery efforts. And Sandra, officials are especially concerned that a heavy downpour could trigger mudslides. Back to you.
Hard to believe now those threats are facing that state. Claudia Cowan, thank you very much. We'll continue to follow all of it.
Really tough news there. Markets opening in a few moments. Facebook held leading big losses yesterday. How long the tech giant's losing streak could last? We get a live report. Opening bell a couple minutes away.
Plus, a legal setback for the Trump administration. What a court has ordered that could make it easier for thousands of migrants currently at the U.S. border to seek asylum here. And the security issues being raised now by the Department of Homeland Security.
We got a president that takes border security seriously. We got a president that believes in the sovereignty in this country. We got a president that believes in the rule of law. We got a president that supports the Border Patrol and ICE. He's doing his job.
Quick look at the markets here, a minute into trading, and it's not looking so good for the bulls. The Dow, just a few seconds after it opened, plunging more than 400 points, and this is after closing down nearly 400 points yesterday amid reports of trouble at Facebook. Shares of the tech giant down now 25% so far this year, on track to see their biggest loss, biggest losing streak ever. So some of those technology companies that led this market to record highs, they're now going down, pulling the rest of the market with it. So another big sell-off to start off this Tuesday morning, Bill Hemmer.
Facebook, Apple. I didn't want to watch it yesterday. And then today. So, but you're right about that. The way we rode this market for the past year and a half has been on the backs of a lot of those big gainers.
But Art Laffer a few moments ago, all calm, don't worry. You know, he sounds very optimistic. But a quick update from FBN: Apple just dipped into bear market territory, which means it's down 20% from its recent highs. So Facebook taking a big hit, Apple taking a big hit. Some of those big tech giants having a hard time.
And the catch with Apple is that if you're in your 401k or investing in some sort of mutual fund, just about everybody owns it, all across the industry too. So everybody's feeling the effects of this. Tariffs are a big deal. You know, the trade battle which continues, and well, you can probably throw a dart and find a reason to go negative today.
We'll see. I mean, there's several weeks left in the year, and markets could do just about anything.
I liked Laffer's history lesson was really good.
Yep.
I can appreciate that.
It was.
Thank you, Art, for that.
It was. And if you want to know, for those keeping track of the year performance, 2018 so far, the Dow is still up more than a full % for the year. The tech-heavy NASDAQ still up nearly 2% for the year. So they're still positive for the year. Keep that in mind as we continue to see this selling.
We mentioned Facebook, too, now, still dealing with the fallout from that scandal over selling users' information. There are claims now, new claims, that the company knew more about it than let on about the efforts by Russian operatives to infect its platform. Peter Ducey's tracking that. He's live in Washington. Peter, what have you found out? Good morning.
Bill, when lawmakers talk about Russian interference in the 2016 election, they are generally referring to Facebook ads purchased by people in Russia intended to sow discord in the U.S. And Facebook executives have testified that they have figured out how to stop it from happening again. But there is a new Wall Street Journal report that reveals there's been more finger pointing inside the boardroom than fixing of algorithms, which backs up what a former contractor from the data mining consulting firm Cambridge Analytica says.
I think that Facebook hasn't been wholly candid with what it knew when and what how much did it tolerate the projects that were happening, because it actually approved the terms and conditions of the applications.
A Facebook spokesperson is quoted by the New York Times as saying, "This has been a tough time at Facebook, and our entire management team has been focused on tackling the issues we face. While these are hard problems, we are working to ensure that people find our products useful and that we protect our community from bad actors." Some lawmakers are pushing new regulations for big tech, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer insists that he can be tough, even though his daughter works at Facebook and its employees have donated to him. A Schumer spokesperson quoted by the Times says Schumer has worried that Facebook would bow to pressure from Republicans who oppose the purging of fake accounts and bots, and has urged Senator Warner and the Senate Intelligence Committee to make this the priority in their ongoing investigation of the company. There has been bipartisan support for regulations on tech giants like Facebook, but so far, nothing. Bill?
Thank you, Peter. Peter Ducey watching that in Washington. Thank you, sir.
Fox News alert: an Obama-appointed federal judge blocking the Trump administration from denying asylum claims to immigrants who cross the border illegally. It comes as the Homeland Security Department says more than 500 criminals have been traveling in the migrant caravan currently at the U.S.-Mexico border. Brandon Judd, the president of the National Border Patrol Council, joins us now. Brandon, thank you for coming on the program this morning. First of all, what can you tell us about the update there on the 500 criminals that have been traveling with this caravan?
Well, this is a good example of what we face on the border on a daily basis. When President Trump says that there are bad people coming across the border, there's proof, there's hard evidence to show that that is in fact the case. And so we have to be concerned about those people that are trying to cross our borders illegally or trying to game the system by claiming asylum at the ports of entry.
So as far as the decision by this judge here, how big of a legal setback is this for the Trump administration?
It's not. This is a speed bump. We understand that these activist groups are going to file their lawsuits in friendly jurisdictions, and that's exactly what happened in this case. But when the dust settles and once it goes to the Supreme Court, if it even has to make it that far, we're going to get a good ruling, and we're going to find that the White House counsel knows what they're doing, just like with the travel ban issue. So again, this is just a speed bump, and that's all it is.
Just so people understand, what exactly has the court ordered here? And obviously you can give us the take of the White House here as well. I know you just recently met with the president.
I did. I met with him yesterday to go over all of the issues that are facing Border Patrol agents and border security, including the troop deployment and how the troop deployment is working. And again, we have to look and we have to say that what this president is doing is extraordinary compared to his predecessors. He's trying to solve a problem that has existed my entire career. I've been in the Border Patrol for 21 years. I put on a uniform, I go out and I patrol the border. And so I'm not just sitting behind a desk and giving you theoretical standpoints. But what we've seen him do is beyond what any other president has done, and he's trying to tackle this issue that he inherited. And frankly, I think we're going to get a handle on it.
So how does the decision by this judge, how does it make it easier for those who are already at the border to seek asylum?
So basically what the judge just told them is go ahead and cross the border illegally. Instead of going through a port of entry, which is a legal process, the judge just encouraged them to break our laws, cross the border illegally, drain Border Patrol resources, because then we have to deploy our resources to those areas to take them into custody. This is the wrong decision. It's the wrong message to send, and this is what is spurring these caravans to continue to come as we see caravans stacking up upon caravan. It's very disappointing that a judge would take this stance to encourage lawlessness.
Meanwhile, this is the stance from Homeland Security reacting to all of this via a tweet from Secretary Nielsen. She says, quote, unfortunately, some members of the caravan are purposely causing disruptions at our border ports of entry. There is a legal and illegal way to enter the U.S. We have deployed additional forces to protect our border. We will enforce all our laws. So what are these security issues that the Department of Homeland Security is now raising as a result of this?
So you have to look at the 500 criminals that are there. You also have to look at them rushing a port of entry. What the American public has to understand is that they're sitting at the largest land port in the entire nation. This land port generates billions of dollars to the American economy on a yearly basis. When these people threaten to rush the port of entry, they're going to close it down, and they're going to stop up this legal traffic that's coming through that generates this revenue. And that's just wrong. And it upsets me. It upsets Border Patrol agents. It should upset the American public to see that they're trying to dictate to us how we have to treat them instead of trying to do this properly like what most Americans and most legal immigrants have done.
We've got to leave it there, Brandon, but since you did just meet with the president, just last few words here. Anecdotally, what sense did you get from the president about how things are going here as this caravan continues to advance?
Well, what his sense is that things are looking up because he's doing different things. He's trying to take a different approach, and these different approaches are paying dividends, like what we saw in 2017, and we're going to continue to see that going to the future.
All right, Brandon Judd, great to have you on the program this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Monday Night Football last night, this was something else, man. Wow. What a string of touchdowns and turnovers between the Rams and Chiefs. Two great teams here battling it out. Back and forth battle all night long. Smitty had the Chiefs. I had the Rams in a $1 bet. Kidding. This game had 6 lead changes. 4 of them were in the fourth quarter alone. The Rams able to seal the deal after a late score and a game-ending interception. 54-51 the final. Wow. In 4 quarters, no overtime.
Wow.
The highest scoring game in the history of Monday Night Football. Something else to watch. First time any team had scored 50-plus points and lost. Chiefs quarterback Patrick Mahomes, great player there, also set a Monday night record throwing for 6 touchdowns. That cost him right there toward the end.
That sets the bar pretty high for some Monday Night Football, don't you think, Cameron?
I agree with you. Both teams came in 9-1. I mean, they really playing really good football. So maybe they meet again in Atlanta for the Super Bowl first Sunday in February. Perhaps. Playing well.
A couple months away. Breaking news out of California this morning, where the situation continues to get worse for those in the fire zone. Heavy rains tomorrow now threatening to bring mudslides and flash flooding. We will speak to officials on the ground live next. Chris Watts will spend the rest of his life in prison. The Colorado man pleading guilty to the horrific murders of his wife, 2 daughters, and unborn child. Watts pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. The 33-year-old remaining silent during his sentencing hearing yesterday as his wife's family spoke in the courtroom.
You carry them out like trash of the house. Yes, I seen the videotape. You buried my daughter Shannon and Nico in a shallow grave. And then you put Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster.
Back in August, his daughter, Shannon Watts, was strangled, and her 2 young daughters were smothered in their Colorado home. Their bodies disposed of at a secluded site where Watts worked.
Fox News alert now out to California on those wildfires. 80 are confirmed dead, hundreds still unaccounted for. National Weather Service issuing flash flood warnings for the northern part of the state as we now get a look at the devastation caused by the deadly Camp Fire. Look at the before and after there. Tim Taylor's Butte County Superintendent. Sir, thank you for your time. I know the sun's just breaking out there in California. What do we need to know about what you're dealing with, sir?
Well, we have a goal of by December 3rd to get all 32,000 kids in this county, and especially the 500 to 5,700 kids who've lost their homes, into school in a nice environment. We'll have to use some temporary sites until we can get more of an interim going. So everyone's working hard. Got hundreds of mental health counselors preparing, and got a big task ahead of us, but we're staying on course, and we have confidence we'll have every kid who's ready to go to school back in school on December 3rd.
I love the target. 2 weeks away. You're going to have a lot of work to do. It's going to be a tough holiday for a lot of families there in Northern California. I know you're well aware of that. You were in Chico earlier. You're in Oroville now. When you talk about the number of missing and unaccounted for, what is the process for determining where these people are now?
Well, our sheriff is the baddest guy around, and he's so solid. Him and I worked on when we evacuated this whole county because of the Oroville Dam, which was a shock to us. So, unfortunately, we have a lot of experience on this type of thing. But the magnitude of this is terrible. They're doing the work. The forensics and the law officers, the officers are up there looking for bones and looking for people. And that's another factor that really causes trauma for the kids and the families that are going to school is they're waiting to hear about their friends in the community that are missing. So it's not just like, nothing else is going on. The fire's still active. They're looking for dead bodies, and we're trying to get kids in school. So it's a really tough mix for us. But we're Butte strong, and we're tough rural, small town people here, and we're not going to back down. We're going to keep going.
Big challenges. If one were to drive into your town, be it Paradise or Oroville, what would they see? Is it every other street? Is it every other block? How would you describe it to somebody who has not been there?
Well, I think it's just like a mass destruction, like a bomb went off. And when you see these FEMA guys and first responders that have dealt with a lot of fires come down the hill, look like they just got run. They said they haven't seen anything like this with a fire. And fire, like everything else in life, is a little random. There'll be a whole court of houses gone and one standing for no real apparent reason, or there'll be a couple businesses up and the rest are wiped out. The high school has every building, every residence around them wiped out, but not the whole school. So the behavior of the fire was shocking. And this is a small town. Most of those people live there their whole life. It's so tragic. We've gotten past the total shock and get people in and the adrenaline around that. Now it's just really setting in on those poor people. And that is their town. As I told the people, it's about Friday night football, about barbecues, cheerleaders, and that's all been just wiped out. Although I think the stadium actually is still standing. So when we rebuild, it will be a great day when we have another football game up there.
Sir, our best to you. Yeah, everybody out there, too, dealing with this.
Can I do one little shout-out?
Sure.
Sorry. To all the people from Fox. So the football, 195 of the 200 student-athletes lost their homes. And I love what everybody's doing with the football teams. But I'm going to reach out to my Fox friends here and say, we got an ag program up there. I want to have something going for the kids that are in dance and all that. I'd like for someone to email me how we could do something for the kids in the agricultural world, because football and baseball seem to take care of, which is lovely.
Okay.
And also the Boys and Girls Club needs your help. They've lost everything up there, and I just love the Boys and Girls Club. So thank you for letting me say that. And go to their website to donate to the Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you, Tim. Our best to you, okay?
Hey, thanks for your time, Bill.
I know you're
really
dealing
appreciate
with a whole lot out there, you bet. Tim Taylor there in Northern California.
Thank you so much.
Fox News alert out of Florida. After 2 recounts and countless controversies, the election results are in for the hotly contested Senate and governor's races there. We have got those results for you next.
Also, countdown to Thanksgiving. Turkey birds going in. That means a presidential pardon could come this week, maybe today, huh? Peas or carrots? You get it?
You gotta love it.
You got one named peas, you got one named carrots. Who's gonna get it? Coming up.